Hi and welcome back. My name's David Martin, and in this video we're going to build on the last video. Last time we talked a lot around beliefs, and we talked a lot around how we structure those beliefs and how they determine what we would normally do. In other words, our status quos, and what we would normally feel within a given context. Because what we would normally do and how we would normally feel about that determines what we'll actually engage in, or determine what we actually do, what we take part in, what we'll try and what we'll attempt. And what we learnt last time was that if we could move our status quos further up the scale towards more of the things we want, so we did more of that normally, and at the same time we moved our feelings up towards feeling good about what it is we're doing now, then we're more likely to achieve the things that are important to us much more easily, much more normally, much more every day. Okay, now that's the thing. That's one of the key secrets to success, is that what we do every day determines what we get. Because at the end of the day, we're all moving someplace. We said that right at the very beginning, didn't we? The question is, where are we going? And where is what we're doing? Where is what we're thinking about? Where is what we're feeling about? Where is what the events we're getting involved in? Where is our focus and our attention? Where are those things taking us? And also how they're influencing our chemistry. So if we can get all of those things into alignment, then we end up quite naturally moving more towards the things that we want and away from the things that we don't want by comparison. And that would just become normal. Now, for most people, that's not normal. For successful people, that's normal. But for almost everybody else, most of the time they're kind of zigzagging towards what they want and then away from it. And they don't even realize that until they run up against the door of some of the things they don't want in their lives, and then they go, well, how did that happen? You know, how come this always happens to me? And the problem with asking questions like that is that your brain is designed to give you answers. And if you ask really disempowering questions, it will come up with several thousand disempowering answers. Not really useful. A better question to ask is what do I want, and then how do I go about getting it, not the opposite by comparison. So the reason I mention that is because today, in today's video, what we're going to focus more on is a part of beliefs called values. Now, values in simple terms, if you look in a dictionary, the word value just means something that's important to us, either to have or to avoid. Now think about that for a second. Doesn't that sound a lot like motivation? That's because it is. We always have a tendency to move towards the things that we want, towards the things that are important to us, and away from the things we don't want, away from the things we most want to avoid in our lives. Okay, so today's session, if you understand today, it's going to help you set goals better. And when we're talking about goal setting, I'm really not interested in goal setting, because setting a goal and getting a goal is quite different, isn't it? I'm much more interested in teaching people how to get goals, not just set them. You see, so many people come across traditional goal-setting methods, and let's say, for example, it might be affirmations. Now, affirmations in and of themselves, you know, stated in first person, present tense, I am X, you know, like I am confident, for example, or I am not confident. If you have an affirmation, then, and it's a useful affirmation, then for a lot of people, they say to themselves, well, if I say this over and over again, at some point in my life, I'm going to believe it. But the problem is that from the moment they start saying it until that point, they don't believe it. And so a part of them is always saying to themselves, who are you kidding? You don't really believe it, you're not confident. And what you do instead is a lot of people stack up all this negative build-up, this negative vibe around stating the positive affirmation. Okay, that's just how your brain works. You say something to it that doesn't make sense, and it will give you lots of reasons why it doesn't make sense. So traditional goal setting in and of itself doesn't necessarily work that well. What we're interested in is helping people to get goals, helping them to get to a state of being by knowing what's important to them, by really underpinning their values, that their goals actually feel inevitable. Now, I don't know about you, but wouldn't you like to have your goals feel inevitable? I'm sure you would. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you haven't already, stop this video, go get a pen and paper. Go do that now. If you've got a pen and paper in front of you, start writing these things down. because your exercise at the end of this video is to write down everything that you want. Write down everything that feels important to you in your life. Now, let me give you some examples. You might decide that what's important to you in your life is your health. What's important to you is financial freedom. What's important to you is loving relationships. What's important to you is having choices, having freedom, feeling fulfilled. Maybe some of those are the things that are important to you to have. Then what I want you to do is I want you to write down the opposite. I want you to write down all of the things that it's important for you to avoid. Okay? Now, here's a trick. If ever in the past you've found it difficult to write down your goals, it's because you've been trying to write down what it is you want. And for a lot of people, that's a challenge. A, they might not know what they want, and B, it might feel wrong to write it down. You know, if you might say to yourself, hey, I want to be a millionaire, and you write that down as a goal or an affirmation, well, then a part of your brain might go, who are you kidding? Particularly if right now you're poor. Okay, so writing down the things you want might be a challenge. If it's not, just write them down. Write down what's important to you. Then write down all the things you most want to avoid. Okay? All of the things that are important for you to not have in your life. For me, let me give you some examples. It might be, I don't want to live in an area that's unsafe for my family. I don't want to not do something fulfilling. I don't want to not add value to other people's lives. There are a lot of things I don't want in my life. And I'm sure there are lots of things in your life you don't want as well. Write those things down. Because the clearer you can get about the things that you don't want in your life, then the clearer you'll know what you want in your life by comparison, because they'll be the exact opposite. You might not want to be poor, so you might want to have financial freedom. You might not want to be unhealthy or sick or unwell, so you might want to have good health by comparison. Can you see what I'm saying? I'm sure you can. So that's what I'd like you to do after this video has finished. But I also want you to understand this. And that is that your values are broken down into key components, just like all beliefs are. Let me show you what they are. First of all, you might have the value. In other words, what's important. Now, attached to every value is going to be a meaning. In other words, if I said to myself, I wanted to be financially free, it was important to me to be financially free, then the question would be, what does that mean? Well, for me, it might mean that means I can send my kids to the school that I want them to go to so they can get the education that I want them to have. It might mean that I can then live in the area that is safe for my family and that provides the lifestyle that I want them to enjoy. It might mean a lot of things. What do those things mean for you? Okay, I'm sure you get my drift. Now, attached to meanings will always be expectations and rules. Now, let me expand on that for a second. An expectation might be, if I'm financially free, in other words, that's what's important, if it means to me the things that I described before, then my expectation is what? Is it positive or is it negative? In other words, do I expect to have it or do I expect not to have it? Because you generally get what you expect. And what I find people get in the most trouble with themselves is they might write down the things that are important to them, but then they have it associated with an unuseful expectation. In other words, and I'll tell you a true story. I once coached a guy, a very successful business person, and one of his core values was he wanted to be exceptionally successful in his business. But his expectation was that to be exceptionally successful, he had to earn X amount of money every year, regardless of what was going on in his life. He had to always look a certain way. He had to always drive a specific kind of car. He had to always, in other words, what I'm saying is that he had all of these rules that weren't necessarily fair for him to have. In fact, many of his rules, many of his expectations of himself were unfair. Not only were they unfair, they were unattainable. So here he was, trying to get motivated about this important thing in his life. They had a whole lot of meaning for him, but then he disempowered himself by having unfair rules and unfair expectations. So when he woke up in the morning, did he feel motivated? No. He felt frustrated. Okay, I'm sure you get my drift. Now the same is true. If you can do this for yourself, then do the same for your away froms. In other words, the things you don't want in your life. Write down all the things you don't want. Write down the consequences of having those things in your life. And then write down what you expect, whether you expect them to happen or not happen. And then make sure your rules and expectations are fair and reasonable. Try and stack the deck in your favour. Try and make it impossible for you to lose. And you'll win all the time. Okay, it's really that simple. So that's all for today. That's quite a lot for today. So what I want you to do is turn the video off. Go write some notes. Come back to the video. Watch it again and again and again until you really understand what we're talking about here, so you can stack the deck in your favour. Make sure that your values are multiplied in power by the meaning you attach to them, and multiplied by the positive expectation that you have around successfully achieving those things, and make sure your rules are fair. And then what you'll find is you'll go away and engage in the activities that you need to engage in order to create the result that you want. Thanks for listening. See you again soon.